June 4th, 1942, just after dawn. 20,000 feet above the cold, blue emptiness north of Midway Atoll, the sun is climbing behind scattered clouds, turning the Pacific into a sheet of hammered steel. In the cockpit of his Mitsubishi A6M0, Petty Officer, First Class, Saburo Sakai adjusts his oxygen mask and scans the sky. His aircraft is light, responsive, alive beneath his hands. The Zero answers every touch like an extension of his body. This is what Japanese naval aviation prides itself on: grace, agility, perfection in motion. Then Sakai spots them. American fighters, stubby, thick-bodied, moving fast, but clumsy, at least at first glance. As the formation turns, the Zeros slide into position effortlessly. The Japanese pilots exchange quick glances and confident grins behind their goggles. These Americans are flying Grumman Wildcats, heavy, underpowered, and slow to climb. The Zeros dive. In seconds, the sky explodes into twisting contrails and machine gun fire. Sakai rolls inverted, pulls hard, and watches a Wildcat struggle to follow before dropping away. Another American aircraft bursts into flame. The outcome feels inevitable. It always does. Down below, Midway burns. Above it, Japan's elite carrier pilots dominate the air exactly as they have since Pearl Harbor. And in cockpits across the Imperial Japanese Navy, a belief hardens into certainty. No American fighter can match the Zero. Not in a turn, not in a climb, not in a knife fight in the clouds. So when rumors begin circulating later that year, whispers of a new American fighter being tested back home, Japanese pilots barely react. A heavier aircraft, they're told. More armor, bigger guns, built by Grumman again. They laugh. In ready rooms aboard carriers like Shokaku and Zuikaku, veteran pilots joke that the Americans still don't understand air combat. Armor just makes you slower. Bigger guns don't matter if you can't get on target. Speed is useless if you can't turn. The Zero has proven this over China, over Pearl Harbor, over the Philippines, and over the Coral Sea. The Americans, meanwhile, are learning a different lesson. Late 1942, Naval Air Station, Norfolk, Virginia. The wind is sharp with winter as Lieutenant Commander James Flatley watches a massive dark blue fighter roll to a stop on the tarmac. It looks nothing like the Zero. It doesn't even look like the Wildcat. This aircraft is bigger, broader. Its fuselage seems thick with purpose. The engine cowling alone suggests brute force rather than elegance. Painted on the side of the aircraft is its designation, F6F Hellcat. Flatley walks around it slowly. 6 .50 caliber machine guns sit heavy in the wings. Armor plating wraps the cockpit. Self-sealing fuel tanks are hidden beneath layers of protection. And under the cowling rests a Pratt & Whitney R2800 double wasp engine, 2,000 horsepower of controlled violence. The Hellcat is not designed to dance. It is designed to survive and kill. Grumman engineers built it with one enemy in mind, the Zero. They studied captured Japanese aircraft. They listened to combat reports from surviving Wildcat pilots. They knew the Zero could outturn almost anything. So they refused to chase it into a turning fight. Instead, they built speed, dive performance, firepower, and protection that would forgive mistakes. But in 1942, none of that matters yet. Out over the Solomon Islands, the war grinds on. The Japanese still control the skies with experienced pilots who trained for years before ever seeing combat. American pilots rotate in fresh, undertrained, often outmatched. Wildcats bleed. Zeros thrive. In October, during the battles over Guadalcanal, Japanese pilots continue to rack up kills. They notice Americans trying new tactics, diving attacks, high-speed slashing runs, but the aircraft themselves are still familiar, still vulnerable. Then, late in the year, something changes. December 1942, Pearl Harbor. Crates are unloaded under tight security. New squadrons begin training with an aircraft that feels completely different from anything the U.S. Navy has flown before. Pilots climb into the Hellcat and feel the weight immediately. The aircraft doesn't flick into turns. It resists sudden movements. But when the throttle goes forward, the Hellcat surges, climbs faster than expected, dives like a stone with wings, and when pilots fire the guns for the first time, the recoil shudders through the airframe like a hammer blow. 6 machine guns, all synchronized, all devastating. Instructors drill one lesson over and over again. Do not turn with a Zero, ever. Instead, altitude, speed, discipline. The Hellcat is not here to duel, it is here to hunt. Far across the Pacific, Japanese intelligence officers receive scattered reports. A new American fighter, larger than the Wildcat, faster in a dive, tougher. Carrier pilots shrug it off. They've heard this before. Every enemy claims their next aircraft will change the war. Every enemy underestimates the Zero. But by early 1943, American carriers are preparing to sail again, not with the tired Wildcats of Midway and Guadalcanal, but with squadrons of Hellcats warming their engines on steel decks. And for the first time since the war began, the balance in the sky is about to shift. The Japanese pilots don't know it yet, but soon, very soon, the laughter will stop. August 31st, 1943. The air above Marcus Island, a tiny speck of land 1,000 miles from Tokyo. The Pacific stretches endlessly in every direction, broken only by towering clouds and the distant glint of sunlight on ocean swells. A formation of American carrier aircraft approaches from the east, engines droning in a steady, confident rhythm. At the front of the fighter screen, Lieutenant Alex Vrechiu grips the control stick of his F6F Hellcat. His cockpit smells of oil, hot metal, and sweat. The canopy vibrates slightly as the big engine pulls him forward at nearly 300 knots. Below him, the ocean looks calm, deceptively so. Vrechiu has been briefed on the Zero. Everyone has. He knows its reputation. He also knows something else. This aircraft can take a hit. Radar warnings crackle over the radio. Japanese fighters are inbound. Moments later, the first Zeros appear, slender, pale shapes cutting across the sky, climbing hard to intercept. From their cockpits, the Japanese pilots get their first clear look at the Hellcat. It looks slow, it looks heavy. And as the formations close, one Zero pilot, Petty Officer Hiroshi Tanaka, banks toward Vrechiu with practiced ease. Tanaka is a veteran. He has fought Wildcats before. He knows their weaknesses. He expects the same fight. The Hellcat doesn't turn. Instead, Vrechiu shoves the throttle forward and dives. The Hellcat accelerates brutally, its nose dropping as gravity and horsepower combine. Tanaka reacts instinctively, rolling into pursuit, but the gap widens instead of closing. The Zero shudders as it nears its red line. The Hellcat is already gone. Vrechiu pulls up sharply, converting speed into altitude, then rolls over and comes back down. This time, he fires. 6 .50 caliber machine guns roar at once. Tracer rounds stitch through the air, tearing into the Zero's wing root. Tanaka barely has time to register the impact before flames erupt from his fuel tank. The Zero disintegrates in a spinning fireball. Across the sky, similar scenes unfold. Japanese pilots attempt tight turns, confident they can force the Americans into a turning fight. But the Hellcats refuse to play along. They dive, climb, and slash through Japanese formations like predators making single, lethal strikes. One Hellcat absorbs multiple hits, 20 mm cannon rounds punching into its fuselage. The pilot grunts as fragments tear through the cockpit, but the aircraft stays together. The engine keeps running. He breaks away, alive. A Zero hit by a single burst, by contrast, explodes. By the end of the engagement, American pilots are stunned. They've won. Not narrowly, not by luck, decisively. Back aboard the carrier USS Essex, mechanics count bullet holes in returning Hellcats. Some aircraft look like flying wrecks, shredded control surfaces, oil-streaked fuselages, cracked canopies. Yet almost all of them land. In the ready room, Vrechiu and his fellow pilots sit in stunned silence as the results are tallied. Japanese losses are heavy, American losses are minimal. For the first time, the Zero has been beaten consistently in open combat. Word spreads quickly through the fleet. The Hellcat works. In Japan, reports arrive with disturbing contradictions. Pilots describe an American fighter that dives faster than a Zero, climbs well enough to escape, and shrugs off damage that would destroy any Japanese aircraft. Some senior officers dismiss the accounts as exaggeration. Others blame fatigue or poor tactics. But the veterans know better. They felt it in the controls. They saw it in the sky. The Hellcat isn't trying to outfly the Zero. It's trying to outlast it, and that difference is deadly. As 1943 wears on, the Hellcat arrives in greater numbers. New squadrons rotate into combat fully trained on energy fighting. Hit and run attacks designed to bleed the enemy without risking close combat. Japanese carrier air groups, once composed of hand-picked elites, are thinning. Experienced pilots are being lost faster than they can be replaced. Training programs are shortened. New pilots arrive with fewer hours, less confidence. The Zero, once the symbol of Japanese dominance, is unchanged. The world around it is not. October 1943. Over Wake Island. Another interception. Another group of Zeros climbing to meet American aircraft. This time, the Hellcats don't just survive. They hunt. They coordinate attacks. 2 Hellcats dive, forcing Zeros to break formation, while others swoop in from above. Tracers fill the sky. Parachutes blossom. Some Japanese, some American. But the numbers tell the story. 5 Zeros down, no Hellcats lost. The laughter from 1942 is gone now. Japanese pilots begin to warn each other over the radio. Do not chase the blue fighters in a dive. Do not stay in a vertical fight. Do not take head-on passes. But the Hellcat excels in exactly those situations. Head-on attacks favor its armor and firepower. Diving escapes favor its speed. Climbing fights favor its engine. There's no safe place left. By the end of 1943, the Hellcat has quietly done something no aircraft before it managed to do. It has taken control of the sky from the Zero, and the most dangerous phase of the war for Japanese naval aviation is just beginning. June 19th, 1944. The Philippine Sea. Early morning. The ocean below is calm, almost peaceful, as the largest carrier fleet the world has ever seen moves west in long, deliberate lines. American task forces stretch to the horizon, steel decks packed with aircraft, radar antennas spinning quietly, crews braced for what everyone knows is coming. Above the carriers, Hellcats orbit in layered formations, climbing higher with each rotation. Their engines hum steadily, burning fuel at altitude, waiting. In the cockpit of his Hellcat, Lieutenant Commander David McCampbell checks his instruments and glances at the sky ahead. He is calm, focused. He's flown dozens of combat missions now. He trusts this aircraft with his life. Radar operators aboard the carriers break the silence. A large bogey formation, bearing 270, range 100 miles. This is it. From the west, the Imperial Japanese Navy's carrier air groups are coming in force. Hundreds of aircraft launched in waves. Zeros lead the formations, followed by dive bombers and torpedo planes. Many of the pilots are young, nervous, trained quickly to fill the gaps left by years of attrition. They've been told the Americans rely on numbers. The Japanese skill will still prevail. At 25,000 feet, McCampbell's Hellcats spot them first, dark specks against the bright sky, growing larger by the second. "Bandits in sight," he radios. "Tally-ho." The Hellcats tip forward as one. They dive. The sky becomes chaos in moments. Zeros scatter as Hellcats tear through the formations at high speed. Tracers flash, engines scream, aircraft explode into fragments that tumble toward the sea. McCampbell lines up a Zero crossing his path. He fires a short burst. The Zero's wing shears off cleanly. The pilot never ejects. Another Zero tries to latch onto his tail. McCampbell shoves the throttle forward and dives. The Hellcat accelerates brutally. The Zero follows. Too long. Its wings begin to shudder. The Japanese pilot pulls up too late. The aircraft snaps apart under the stress. Across the battle space, Hellcats dominate the fight. They attack from above, break away before Zeros can turn, then climb back to altitude, untouched. American pilots work in pairs, covering each other, calling out threats, coordinating kills. Below, Japanese bombers attempt to push through, but few make it past the fighter screen. Those that do are met by dense anti-aircraft fire. Bombs fall wide, torpedoes miss. By midday, the result is undeniable. The Japanese have lost hundreds of aircraft. The Americans lose fewer than 30. The battle will later be called the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot. But in the moment, there is no humor, only disbelief. Japanese survivors limp back toward their carriers, many with empty fuel tanks, damaged aircraft, or wounded pilots. Some never make it. They ditch in the open sea, far from rescue. In the ready rooms aboard Japanese carriers, silence reigns. Veteran pilots stare at the floor. New pilots shake uncontrollably. They have faced something they do not understand. The Hellcat has stripped away every advantage the Zero once held. In the weeks that follow, the pattern repeats. Over Saipan, over Guam, over Tinian. Everywhere the Hellcat appears, Japanese air power collapses. The Zero can still turn tighter. It can still climb quickly at low speeds. But none of it matters if the Hellcat refuses to engage on those terms. The Japanese attempt new tactics, ambushes, head-on attacks, mass formations. Each one fails against American radar, disciplined formations, and the Hellcat's raw survivability. Hellcats return from missions riddled with holes, wings torn, fuselages scarred. Pilots climb out alive. Zeros do not. By late 1944, American intelligence estimates that the Hellcat has achieved an unprecedented kill ratio, nearly 19-1 against Japanese aircraft. The Zero, once feared, is now hunted. But the psychological damage cuts deeper than the numbers. Japanese pilots begin to hesitate. They avoid combat when possible. They break off engagements early. Confidence, once the core of Japanese air doctrine, is gone. And for the first time, the Imperial Japanese Navy can no longer protect its carriers. October 1944, the Battle of Leyte Gulf. Hellcats sweep the skies again, shredding what remains of Japanese naval aviation. Zeros are intercepted before they ever see their targets. Bombers are destroyed in formation. Entire air groups are wiped out in minutes. In desperation, Japan turns to a final, horrifying tactic. Pilots volunteer, or are ordered, to crash their aircraft directly into American ships. Kamikaze attacks begin. The Hellcat meets them too. Hellcat pilots shoot down suicide aircraft by the dozens, often just seconds before impact. The sky fills with burning wreckage and falling bodies. The Zero is no longer a symbol of air superiority. It is a weapon of desperation. And the Hellcat, built to counter a legend, has done far more than that. It has erased it. November 1944. The Philippine Sea fades behind the American fleet as carriers turn east to rearm and refuel. On their decks, Hellcats sit in long, orderly rows, scarred, oil-streaked, but ready to fly again. In Japan, the mood could not be more different. At airfields across the home islands, instructors stand before classrooms of young pilots barely out of their teens. The lessons are rushed. Flight hours are limited. Fuel is scarce, aircraft are worn. Many of these pilots have never landed on a carrier deck. Some have never fired their guns in the air. They are told they will face the Hellcat. They are not told how to survive it. The Zero they climb into is the same basic design flown in 1941. It is light, agile, but now it is outdated. No armor, no self-sealing tanks. Against the Hellcat's firepower, it is fragile to the point of helplessness. December 7th, 1944, 3 years to the day after Pearl Harbor. American Hellcats sweep over Luzon in the Philippines, escorting bombers striking Japanese airfields. Lieutenant Junior Grade Eugene Valencia leads his division through scattered clouds at 18,000 feet. Below them, Zeros scramble desperately from muddy runways. Valencia watches as one Zero pulls up sharply, trying to gain altitude fast enough to challenge the Americans. The Japanese pilot levels off and turns hard, hoping to force a dogfight. Valencia doesn't follow. He dives instead. The Hellcat screams downward. The Zero flashes across his gun sight. A single burst, less than 2 seconds. The Zero disintegrates. This is how most fights end now. Not with drawn-out dogfights, not with elegant maneuvers, with overwhelming force applied at the right moment. By early 1945, Hellcat pilots are no longer just interceptors. They strafe airfields, destroy aircraft on the ground, and hunt anything that moves. Japanese aircraft are shot down during takeoff. Pilots are killed before ever reaching combat altitude. The elite Japanese carrier pilots, the men who dominated the early war, are almost all gone, killed at Midway, worn down over Guadalcanal, finished off by Hellcats over the Philippine Sea. Those who remain know the truth. They are flying into the teeth of an enemy they cannot defeat. Some still fight with desperate courage. Others turn to kamikaze attacks, believing death is preferable to defeat. But even then, the Hellcat stands between them and their targets. American pilots develop brutal efficiency. They aim for engines, for cockpits. They fire early and often. They work in teams, covering each other relentlessly. The sky belongs to them now. April 7th, 1945. Okinawa. Hellcats intercept another wave of Japanese aircraft inbound toward the fleet. Among them are Zeros carrying bombs beneath their fuselages. Kamikaze pilots on one-way missions. Lieutenant Vrashiu spots one diving toward a destroyer. He fires from long range. The Zero wobbles, but keeps coming. Vrashiu closes in and fires again. The Zero explodes less than 100 yards from the ship. The crew below watches debris rain into the sea instead of into their hull. This happens again and again. The Hellcat is no longer just an aircraft. It is a shield. By war's end, the numbers are staggering. Over 5,000 enemy aircraft destroyed. More than half of them by Hellcats. It becomes the most successful carrier-based fighter in history. But statistics don't capture the human cost. Japanese pilots who once laughed at the Hellcat now speak of it with fear. Survivors describe it as impossible to escape, impossible to outfight. A dark blue shape that dives out of the sun and leaves nothing behind but fire. For the United States Navy, the Hellcat represents something else entirely. Adaptation. It is proof that learning faster than your enemy can decide a war. As the Pacific Campaign draws to a close, Hellcats continue flying patrols over the ruins of Japanese cities, over surrendering airfields, over seas littered with wreckage. The Zero's era is over, and the Hellcat has written its final chapter in blood and steel. August 15th, 1945. The Pacific sky is quiet. For the first time in years, there are no contrails twisting into combat spirals, no gunfire echoing across the clouds, just the steady drone of engines as American fighters patrol an ocean that no longer fights back. A lone F6F Hellcat cruises at altitude, sunlight reflecting off its dark blue wings. Inside the cockpit, the pilot scans the horizon out of habit more than necessity. The war is over. Japan has surrendered. Below him, the sea hides the wreckage of thousands of aircraft, Zeros and Hellcats alike, silent reminders of a battle that decided the fate of an empire. 3 years earlier, Japanese pilots laughed at the idea of this machine threatening them. They trusted in skill, tradition, and a fighter that once ruled the skies through elegance and precision. But war does not reward elegance forever. The Hellcat was not beautiful in the way the Zero was. It was heavy, brutal, unforgiving, built not to impress, but to endure. It carried the scars of combat and brought its pilots home again and again. It gave American aviators confidence, the confidence to engage, to survive mistakes, to learn from failure. And with each engagement, the Hellcat erased another piece of the Zero's legend. By the end of the war, the Imperial Japanese Navy's carrier aviation no longer existed as a fighting force. The men who once defined it were gone, replaced by younger pilots sent into unwinnable battles against an enemy that had learned how to fight smarter. The Hellcat did not win the war alone, but it broke the back of Japanese air power at sea. It turned early defeat into overwhelming dominance. It transformed the Pacific sky from a place of fear into one of control. For the pilots who flew it, the Hellcat was more than metal and engines. It was protection. It was power. It was the difference between life and death. And for the pilots who faced it from the other side, it was the moment they realized the war had changed, and that the advantage they once laughed about was gone forever. History often remembers the Zero as a masterpiece of design, a symbol of early war brilliance, but it remembers the Hellcat for something far more decisive, ending that era. From the first underestimations to the final surrender, the story of the Hellcat is a reminder that in war, superiority is not about what works first. It's about what adapts fastest. And when the laughter faded from the Japanese cockpits, replaced by fear and silence, the Hellcat had already done its job.